What's up, Degenerate Nation? Welcome to the Big Bets on Campus podcast. This is the midweek college basketball betting preview. I'm Stuckey, and joining me today is my fellow BBOC co-host, Mike Calabrese. A little short-handed today. Tanner McGrath dealing with a personal issue. Hope all is well with him. He should be back shortly. So for today, it's just Mike and I. Same format as usual. Go through the good and the bad of the weekend that was. And then we'll talk through some of our looks for Wednesday and Thursday's college basketball card. Quick programming note. Conference tournaments actually start on Sunday with the Atlantic Sun. We will cover that on Thursday's normal episode with myself, Greg, and Mike. Three-Man Weave will have an episode out, their normal episode on Sunday, and they'll cover, I think, 3 or 4 conference tournaments that start early next week. I'll be recording a couple more episodes on Monday that hit the ones that start midweek. And then we'll have a ton of episodes that I think like 4 or 5 episodes that come out the Monday or Tuesday the week following, where, you know, over a 24-hour period, we'll knock out. I'll do 20 to 25 conference tournaments with the guys from Three-Man Weave, Mike, Tanner, Greg, and we'll have all that out for you. So make sure you're in tune with the podcast feed. Subscribe. Tell a friend, tell them, you know the drill. Leave a 5-star review. Those help us. But yeah, it's March. It's going to be chaotic. Wall-to-wall action coming up. Starts Saturday. And tournament starts Sunday. So let's get to the good. I'll shout out the couple of SEC bubble teams in Arkansas and Vanderbilt who took care of business. Arkansas, great second half against Missouri. It helped that Caleb Grill couldn't make a shot. But that was a huge win for their tourney hopes. And then Vanderbilt had a huge lead against Ole Miss, blew it, were able to bounce back and hold on. The reason I bring it up is a lot of times there's a reason these teams are on the bubble. And a lot of times in these must-win games, you have to pay premiums to back them. And more times than not, you're going to see these teams fall flat. And we saw that across the board, specifically in the ACC. I mean, Pitt against a really short-handed Notre Dame team, surprisingly. Got a couple of, their best shooters were scratched before the game. Pitt is a corpse. Wake Forest goes down to NC State. SMU still can't get a big win, gets blown out at home by Clemson. So it was, and then you had Gonzaga, who I think we have to consider on the bubble. Team can't win a close game, can't win a big game. Their best win is on the first day of the season against Baylor, and Baylor isn't even in that was a top 10 matchup. And neither of those teams are a lock for the tournament yet. I know you liked Gonzaga, and I want to put this in the good because you have to give credit to St. Mary's. Every time St. Mary's beats Gonzaga, it's usually about everyone makes it, including myself, makes it about Gonzaga. But you have to give credit to Randy Bennett for what he's done with this team after losing Mahaney, after losing Jefferson, who's tearing it up for Iowa State. What he's done with this team is incredible. I know you liked Gonzaga. They just couldn't make shots. Do you have any quick thoughts on that game?
Yeah, you would think in an environment like that, a nationally televised game at the Kennel, they'd come out with their hair on fire. The opposite, in terms of the lineup they put out there to start the game.
Joe Few starts -9 in 2 minutes. They lose by 7.
So
not a great look for Mark Few.
An interesting choice by Mark Few in what you could argue was a must-win game in terms of their at-large hopes. Certainly, you would hope that they would knock down some shots, but St. Mary's, this is a good team to tuck away and to, earmark for March Madness, because when they get a lead, they don't give it up. And as you know, and I feel like as we mentioned this, Tanner will somehow parachute into this episode, someone who's suffered more melts than any gambler this season in college basketball. Teams love to give up double-digit leads in college basketball, but St. Mary's, because of their pace, they're so methodical in the half court. They are so efficient in terms of the shots they take. They're just not going to blow leads. And it doesn't even matter playing on the road against a team with, at least on paper, such high offensive upside as the Zags. It didn't matter. So I do agree with you. You got to give credit to Randy Bennett, what he's accomplished. And at this point, let's just cross our fingers and hope they don't get paired up in one of these brackets, the hypothetical right now, but the one that matters is the one the committee gives us on Selection Sunday. Do not pair him up with a mid-major darling that we're really hoping can make a deep run, because this has the kind of making of a team that is just going to ruin a Cinderella run from the opening jump. So if they land in that, 3 or 4 or 5 seed line, I just don't want to see them against my favorite mid-major or low major. I'm hoping that they get one of those pretender teams out of the Big Ten, the last one to make it into the field, something like that, so they can expose them. But that's my concern right now. And I have to be out on the Zags because other than a trip all the way to the WCC final, I think their at-large bids are on life support at this point, and honestly, they deservedly so.
Yeah, friend of the show, friend of mine, Rocco Miller, his latest bracket is St. Mary's versus UC San Diego. I will die. All right, for your good, where are you going?
I'm going to go with 2 pieces of information. The first, I don't know if you saw the tweet from Woj. He is auctioning off his Woj bomb phones, all the breaking stories, players leaving, getting traded throughout all of his time at ESPN, covering the NBA. And he's going to take those proceeds and add it to the war chest, or, the money they're trying to stack in Western New York for St. Bonaventure. And I love this as someone who loves low major and mid-major basketball. You need to compete, but really, if you can get enough money together and buy one player or keep one key player, you saw it with a program like St. Mary's. It would have been great if Jefferson could have stayed, or Mahaney could have stayed if they, put together $250,000 or at least something competitive in that nature. You saw it with Boise State football. They're able to keep Ashton Genty together with their horseshoe collective, able to pass around the collection plate. So Woj is leading by example. Remember, this is a guy who turned down multi-millions from ESPN, broke that contract to go back to his alma mater to try to keep this program relevant, because he said in the fall, he was quoted as saying, the health of this athletic department, particularly the basketball team and their chances to go to March, to be a Cinderella, it can have a ripple effect to the overall health of the university. And I can speak to this as a student reporter 20 years ago in college, sitting in some of the meetings and listening to the university president talk about, should we be putting more money and backing behind the college basketball program? Because could we do something similar to another Jesuit school like Gonzaga? Can that be something that has a huge impact on its university? There's been, extensive studies over the past 10 years that have said, yes, you get, a bump in enrollment, you get a bump in applications, you get all this exposure that would otherwise cost tens of millions of dollars in terms of TV slots, particularly if you can win 1 or 2 games in the tournament. So I love what Woj is doing. He's leading by example. I'm hoping that St. Bonnie's can, keep a player or 2, or maybe steal another from a low major and mid major, and keep the A10 relevant. It's a conference that I really love, and I love the fact that he's going for it. My only question is, if you get the phone, do you get the contacts? Does he scrub the SIM card? Is it put in a glass box like the 700th home run ball from a major leaguer? Like, what exactly are you buying? Or is it just, essentially a husk of a phone and you're having to take his word for it?
That's what I was going to say. I'm interested in buying these if it's like all the contact info and you can read all the conversations. But I assume it's just the phone. I haven't looked into this too much. And then in that case, I have no interest in having a framed hard
BlackBerry,
phone
or whatever it is.
Phone. Yeah. I really don't care. That's something like it'll be Ravel is helping the buy. That's something that Ravel will have. He'll be going to Ravel's house. But you want to see Woj's 7 phones I have framed? What else you got for good?
Also, Clemson. I think we undersold Clemson. I mean, how high can they climb at this point? A 4 seed, perhaps?
I think it could be a 3, depending on what they're doing.
That would be phenomenal because, we've rightfully so slammed the ACC, its overall lack of depth, everything else. But they avoid the letdown after the upset of Duke. They got convincing wins at home against North Carolina, at FSU, and then at SMU, winning by double digits. They're inside the top 25 on both ends of the floor per KenPom, which is usually a winning formula to be able to pick out a team to make a deep run, Final Four, even a national championship. They can really shoot from 3. They always win the turnover battle. And when Shefflin stays out of foul trouble, they can hold their own on the glass. So I guess my question to you, Stuck, did we miss the boat on a surprise Final Four? I see it's still out there at 18-1 at DraftKings. Brunell is a coach that I think is a little bit underrated still after all this time in the ACC. He's putting it together and they're playing their best basketball at the right time. Is that more so that the ACC is so down? But I still view it as like they avoided these letdowns and they're drilling teams, and their upside was demonstrated on their home floor beating Duke. So I don't know. I think 18-1 is a good price. I know it's jumping the gun, maybe one last episode where we add to the portfolio, but Clemson's a team that I'm starting to take more seriously with each passing day.
Well, spoiler, that was going to be my Final Four future for this week's episode.
Well, it looks like you got a vote in your back pocket then.
At 18-1. I mean, the thing is, like, over the past 3 months, their only losses were at Louisville and then a bunch in overtime. Like, that's it. They lost 3 games in overtime. And I agree. I mean, this team is we had them last year to go to the Final Four. I had a ticket, was able to get some equity out of it because they went to the Elite Eight, and then they just ran into a Bama team that made 16 or 17 threes in that game. I have them. Yeah, I have fair odds like 14, 15-1. So I like it. I mean, this team, number one, if you look at all the teams that are in the top 25 in offense and defense on KenPom and adjusted offensive and defensive efficiency, and essentially you have to be under 50. Like 2014 UConn was, I mean, everyone talks about this, was the one kind of exception. Also Baylor's defense in the COVID year, but I throw out that year. I mean, they didn't play for like 3 weeks together, and that was just a weird year. But Clemson qualifies. They also, I mean, look, we have seen them outside. I mean, they beat Duke. That has to mean, I mean, Duke looks like a juggernaut. They beat Kentucky earlier this season when Kentucky was at full strength. I think this team's experienced, one of the most experienced teams in the country. They're very comfortable in the half court. They're not going to let you get anything in transition. I think they're much better than last year. It's a Elite Eight team. And the reason is because last year, if you look, I mean, going into the tournament last year, you got to remember, they got blown out in the ACC tournament, their first game against BC. They came in, I think, ranked like 35th on KenPom. And their defense is dramatically better this year. I mean, last year you had, because look, PJ Hall, he was incredible, especially on offense. But Victor Locken has been great offensively, and I think he's better defensively. You also have their biggest, they could not force any turnovers. They couldn't put any pressure on the ball. Joseph Girard, who we all loved, he was a defensive liability. And now you have, and I've come all the way around on him, Jaden Zachary, and Dylan Hunter has taken the next step. Chauncey Wiggins is playing better. Shefflin's defense has gotten better. So I think that they're better because of their defense this year. I mean, they can lock you down in the half court, and they, as you said, they can shoot. They're shooting nearly 40% from three on the season.
And I brought this up probably, I don't know, 3 or 4 episodes ago. Shefflin is so critical to what they do on the glass and defensively, and he needs to stay on the floor. The sample size is huge. He just never gets into foul trouble. I think the last time he had 4 fouls was that quadruple overtime game against Georgia Tech where he played north of 40 minutes. So if they were a team that was that dependent on one big and that guy potentially could get into foul trouble, then there'd be legitimate questions. But until it happens, he also knows when he does have, 2 and 3 fouls, 4 fouls in the second half, how to stay on the floor. I don't think you can overstate how important that is, because they want to run and have 3 and 4 guards around him, to be able to really be able to do what they want to be able to do offensively, particularly from long range. They're a top 10 3-point shooting team in overall accuracy. So he is so critical, but at this point, I feel nothing but confidence about him playing north of 30 minutes every game.
Yeah, Chase Hunter is incredible. He's taken the next step. I think this team is better by a decent margin than last year, and they went to the Elite Eight. So, yeah, I think this is a good time to buy Clemson. If you look at all the teams that are in the top 25 offensive defense, you look at their prices, Clemson's the one that sticks out. That's still, I think.
But why do you think that is? Is it just the public perception of them as a football school? Like you said, the recency bias should be going in the opposite direction, where they just made a run to the Elite Eight. I feel like the whole country's kind of sleeping.
They're just not a sexy team to many people. That people don't see them. They're in the ACC. I just think that people don't believe in them because it's some ACC bias. But again, these ACC teams that get in, we see it every year. Even, recently when the AC's had a down year, they overperform. So, I like Clemson. On to the bad. I'm going to say, man, I mean, I'll have a quick rant here. I had my weekend, I basically had washed out from Saturday to last night. After I had Friday, I had Villanova. Couldn't miss a 3. It was beautiful. And a lot of times that's what these games come down to. You want to get the best number, and then a lot of times you're just hoping for a 3-point variance. My teams could not make a 3 for 3 straight days. And there's nothing worse than watching the games. I think I bet on 12 or 13 teams between Saturday and Monday. They shot 24% combined from 3. The one team, I mean, the worst was Texas A&M against Tennessee. I'm still not over that game. Yes, Texas A&M can't shoot, but they were 5 of 30 from 3. And Tennessee, who's not a great shooting team, was 13 of 27. They shot 50%. Texas A&M shot 16%, and the game went right down to the wire. Tennessee shot 37% from 2. Texas A&M was 62% from 2. That was so frustrating, that game. And then the one team that did shoot well for me was Texas State. And the problem was, so did South Alabama, who's not a good shooting team. South Alabama, 31% on the year. They play Texas State. Texas State ends up winning. I pushed the bet. Lost some I had some 1.5 too. Lost some with 1.5. South Alabama, so finishes 12 of 27. Barry Dunning, who had one of the most incredible performances of the weekend, finished with 46 points. He was 9 of 12 from 3. He's a 25% career 3-point shooter. He was making everything under the sun. And I have Connor Sejan can't make wide open threes. Texas A&M going 5 of 30. So it was frustrating, but that's just the swings of the season. Your 3-point variance.
Yeah, cue the clip from Woody Harrelson and White Man Can't Jump. Like, I'd say it's luck of the Irish, but I'm not Irish. Like, who knows when these guys just start knocking down threes from all over the place. It is frustrating. That's kind of the common theme for some of my bad beats and then just straight up bad calls in the last month or so. It's whenever I flip on a game and I'm a couple minutes late, my team started 1 for 9 from 3-point range. Fantastic.
Illinois was one of I think they were 0 of 19 or 1 of 21 to start. I mean, man, they got waxed. I will tell you, though, Illinois, people don't want to hear it, but they have to go in the bad. But they got just absolutely destroyed by Duke. They're probably going to be the most undervalued team down the stretch and in the tournament. They're going to get healthier. They're going to start practicing together. So not only have they had all that go on, they've been running so bad from 3. I mean, it's incredible. They're a top 20 since January 1st. They're a top 20 adjusted offense, and that's with all the injuries, the illnesses, and they're shooting 26% from 3. They're not a great shooting team. They're not 26%. On the other end of the floor, opponents are shooting 42% from 3. Like the delta between their 2-point offense and defense and 3-point offense and defense is extreme. They're going to get healthier. And if you look, it's really funny that people, Michigan is 8-2 over their past 10 games. They've won all 8 games by 4 points or less. They got blown out in the other 2. Everyone's praising Dusty May and this Michigan team. Everyone is throwing Illinois under the bus. Over that 10-game stretch for Michigan, since they're 8-2, Illinois is still ranked ahead of Michigan per Torvik. And they've been bad, and they've been injured, and they've been unlucky. So guess what? Illinois goes to Michigan on Sunday. We'll see how they perform. Hopefully they don't. If they lose to Iowa, though, then I don't know. That's a big red flag. But, yeah, Illinois is going to be a team that they're basically, when they're healthy and once they start getting to practice together, this is a top 15 team in the country, and they're going to be on like the 8 line. So that's not fun for whatever 1 seed might have to draw them. And then my other bad No, that's about it. What do you got?
Yeah, I got screwed on my Cooper Flag over 31.5 points, rebounds, assists. He was at 28 with about 11 minutes to go, but they were just absolutely mopping the floor with the Fighting Illini, so he didn't play the last 8+ minutes of that game. So that was highly frustrating. Now, granted, that was a part of the handicap. You had to consider the chance that the bottom fell out of the Fighting Illini, but to lose by that much, like just keep it within 25 points and they'll stay on the floor until the last TV timeout. So that was brutal. Also, I haven't experienced this one in a while. I played Iowa State and I played Texas Tech, and late scratches to not one, but two starters. So I lose the Iowa State one because I got the number, I think, at 8.5. And then I played Texas Tech on the money line against Houston. How freaking lucky is Houston going to get this year with that kind of,
They also played Kansas without Adams. They played Texas Tech the first game. Toppin got thrown out.
And I've been in this camp. I'm really, I think, the only one saying that I think Houston's overrated. Not that I don't believe they should be a top 5 team and probably a number 1 seed, but people acting like they're significantly better than last year's team. I think that's the incorrect read, and I think it'll show itself in the second weekend of March. But at this point, I was trying to stake my claim in Big 12 play, and I just keep getting the rug pulled out from under me. So that was a rant for me. It just I can deal with the 3-point variance. I can deal with the missed foul shots. I can't deal with losing multiple starters and not having a heads up, because clearly they knew more than 15 minutes before the tip. So just another reason to get an official status injury report, whatever you want to call it, universally across all of college basketball, because it's been killing me. And you would think that some of that luck would go my way. I can't remember the last time I bet a team and then their opponent lost 2 starters 15 minutes before the tip.
Yeah, that was a fortunate weekend, to say the least, for Houston. Injury-wise, I hope that we can get Texas Tech again against Houston in
Me too,
Big 12 tournament.
I think they have
well, and they were in that game right till the final minute.
Anderson
even without
either, so they were there.
Even without their 2 of their best players, and they couldn't make a 3 to save their lives. So yeah, I hope we get the rubber match, because Texas Tech has been shorthanded both times they played Houston this year and split and could have won both. All right, before we get to some midweek looks, it's time for my favorite ad read, because I love EdgeBoost. And if you're listening to this show, you probably like betting as much as I do. And when it comes to betting, there are 2 things I'm always trying to do: make it easier and make it more profitable. That's why I've partnered with EdgeBoost, the financial platform that pays you cash back to wager. EdgeBoost is an online bank account that pays you for every deposit, because with the EdgeBoost Visa debit card, you get up to 0.5% cash back on all your sportsbook, daily fantasy site, and casino transactions. That's free money back in your pocket just for doing what you're already doing. It's a no-brainer. I promise this isn't some credit card gimmick. When I first learned about EdgeBoost, I said, what is this? Are there fees? Nope, there's no fees. They make their money on volume. I said, is there minimum requirements? No. I opened my own EdgeBoost debit card account, made it easier to deposit into all of my sports books. There's no catch. There's no hidden fees, as I said. There's no minimum balance requirements, none of that. And if you've ever had a casino transaction flagged by your bank because they thought it was suspicious, which most of us have had happen, or been given the runaround when trying to fund a sportsbook account online, the EdgeBoost debit card is the perfect tool to alleviate all of those issues. It starts with a $250,000 daily limit and will never be declined for any gambling activity. It's why I was so happy to open an account and was shocked how easy it was. So make your betting life easier and stop leaving money on the table. Visit edgeboost.bet to sign up. And if you use promo code BBOC and deposit $25, you'll receive a $25 deposit match, plus Tier 2 status for faster bank deposits and more cash back. That's edgeboost.bet, promo code BBOC. Love a good ad read on a product that I use. I couldn't say enough good things about EdgeBoost. All right, let's get to some midweek looks. Mike, do you want to start things off?
Sure. Let's start in the Big East on Wednesday. UConn, I'd probably lay up to 11. I'm hoping to get 10 against Georgetown. Know your personnel. No Sorber. He's out for the year. He's going under the knife, I believe, by the time you're listening to this episode. They already beat the Hoyas by 8 in D.C. without McNeely. Now there's no Sorber. McNeely's back in the lineup. And Georgetown continues to struggle on the road. They're 0-4 in their last 4 road trips. Quick turnaround from their trip to Omaha against Creighton. Now they got to go across the country to Hartford. And listen, that Creighton game, I think, is what is going to be the story down the stretch for the Hoyas without Sorber. They got killed on the glass, a team that struggles to get offensive rebounds. The Blue Jays were all over them on the offensive glass. And here comes UConn. The best thing you can say about this team, the most consistent thing when they're at full strength, is they can rebound the basketball on both ends. Solo Ball, by the way, has been quiet since that huge game against Marquette where he couldn't miss from 3. I think it's about time for him to have a bounce back, find his shooting stroke against a mediocre 3-point defense in Georgetown. So, like I said, I'd lay up to 11. I'm hoping I can get it at 10 here, but I think UConn has a chance to build some momentum going into the Big East tournament. I think they're going to win this one going away.
I'll throw out Butler against St. John's, hoping to get 7 more, maybe, hopefully more. Maybe it's a bit of a letdown spot for the Johnnies after that big win. They're on the precipice of clinching the Big East tournament. But Butler, the reason I like this is Butler's the best defensive rebounding team in the league. They don't turn it over too much. They've been good against the press, although they did turn it over quite a bit against St. John's in the first meeting. Johnny's went 1 of 21 from 3 in that game, but they also went uncharacteristic 17-23 from the line, and Butler went 9 of 20. Butler actually led that game in the second half at St. John's. Butler can space out St. John's. They can move the ball, and they can shoot. They're shooting 38% from 3 at home this year. They can also get to the line. So, yeah, I mean, it's an elite catch-and-shoot offense. They're not rim-reliant. Like, that's how you have to beat St. John's. They'll slow it up on offense. It's kind of similar to Villanova. But if you look at the teams that have given St. John's a bit of an issue in conference play, it's ones that can defensive rebound. And Butler is the best in the league in that department. So I think it's a pretty good spot for Butler, and it's not a terrible matchup. I don't think St. John's is going to go 1 of 21 from 3 again, but they've shot over 40% their past 2 games. So I wouldn't be shocked if they just have an awful shooting night. If you can keep St. John's off the offensive glass, they're going to go through scoring droughts. So I don't hate this spot for Butler at home. What else you got?
Just a quick thought on that game, too. I don't know how much of it's gamesmanship from Pitino because he's certainly...
Yeah, you also have Lewis and Richmond dealing with injuries.
Exactly, because he said that Richmond has this, a laundry list of injuries. Does that mean he actually plays him off the bench, limited minutes? When is he going to try to get him healthy before the Big East tournament? Or is this, him just trying to play a little, late game personnel, hide the lineup essentially from his opponent? Because
Lewis is definitely dealing with a groin, though. He was not good against UConn. He missed a game. Those things can flare up, too. So that's just like something that could happen during the game with a little more risk if you back St. John's.
The reason why I wouldn't necessarily make it actionable info in terms of the Richmond injury, if you watch the second episode of the St. John's documentary, he lied to his own son, Richard Pitino, when he said that Richmond was going to come off the bench and then he started. So it wouldn't be a surprise.
I'll never believe Rick, but they're definitely dealing with some groin issues. They're both going to play, but they're not 100%, and maybe their minutes get restricted a little bit, and maybe it flares up. But I don't mind the matchup for Butler here.
I'm going to go down to the Big South for my next play on Wednesday. USC upstate catching a huge number against High Point. The projections have it in the mid-20s. If that's the case, if it's north of 24, I'm going to go ahead and take them. This is the last game of the regular season for High Point. A win wraps up an outright Big South crown and the number 1 seed in next week's tournament. Upstate, by the way, has been really feisty down the stretch. In February, they have an upset of Charleston Southern in their last game and 5 losses by an average of 9 points per game. This is the bottom team in the Big South. So they played a lot more like a middle-class team in the past month. And a big part of that is they have one of the best freshmen in the entire country, Mr. Dean. I'm sure that he's going to transfer up maybe to a higher mid-major in the offseason, if not potentially being a role player at a power program. He's averaging 16 and 5. They easily covered against the same High Point team at home. They were 15-point dogs. It was sweat-free cover. They lost by single digits. And in this same exact situation last year, High Point and head coach Alan Huss, they had it wrapped up, at least a share of the Big South title in their last regular season game. They closed as a 4-point favorite. They lose outright to Longwood at the buzzer, and a team that went 6-10 in Big South play. So to me, I think this is a situational spot if you can get the huge number. I think they're going to go absolutely on cruise control if they get up by, let's call it 15 points in the second half. So I'll go ahead and take the Spartans.
Rolling with Upstate. I'll throw out a couple more. Texas might look for Texas against Arkansas. I mean, it's a good spot on the surface. They're coming off that blowout loss at South Carolina. Arkansas off the Missouri win. Texas has revenge against Arkansas, where Arkansas just started that game red hot from three. The past 8 games, teams are shooting 38% from three against Texas, only 29% against Arkansas. So these teams have benefited, though Arkansas has benefited from some 3-point luck, Texas has not. Texas does have an elite transition defense, which you need against Arkansas. They work in isolation on offense much better than Arkansas, which both of these defenses force you to do. Arkansas won't hurt Texas on the glass where they're weak. And I think Thero is Arkansas's most important player right now, and I'm not sure he's going to play. So that would be a major loss. I think we might get some value on Texas in a huge game for both. And then an ugly one I'll throw out. Though the spot for Arizona State, who lost Freeman, who's not on the team anymore. That hurts them offensively. But BYU, you want to talk? We should have included the refs in that BYU Arizona game.
Back to back. It's one thing to make bad calls, but back to back to end a game like that was just. I think it's enough to open an investigation. That was absolutely horrific,
horrendous. So BYU, probably at the peak of their market value now off that win at Arizona. They're still outside the top 350 and has the metrics away from home metrics. They lost on the road to Providence, TCU, Utah, Cincinnati. Arizona State is a good jump shooting team. That's how you have to beat this compact BYU defense, and especially at home. Arizona State shoots really well, so maybe we'll get some value with the Sun Devils. Penn State, I think we might. Indiana's in must-win mode. They're coming off that Purdue win. Might get an inflated number here. Penn State's playing better the past 2 games. They kind of went through a lull. They went 1-11 over a 12-game stretch, but they dealt with injuries, a number of injuries over that stretch. And they lost games by 6-1, 5-1, 4-2. They lost a ton of close games. They even lost by 6 against Indiana at the Palestra. Indiana shot 40% from 3, which never happens. And Penn State was 3 of 21 and 10 of 18 from the line. Although it's worth noting, Renew didn't play and Puff Johnson did. But over that 12-game stretch, Penn State dropped they were at 35th in KenPom. They dropped to 77th. And teams shot over 40% from 3 against them. Couldn't miss. I do worry about the offensive glass and Indiana dominating there, but and the Hoosiers have been good against the press. They're in the 94th percentile. They've been very good against the press, but they're not a good catch and shoot offense. They don't have elite perimeter shooters, which is really how you beat this aggressive Penn State defense. Niederhauser's on fire the past 2. You never know what you're going to get with Indiana. So with this narrative, everyone just saw Indiana win. Oh, they're in must-win mode. They're at home. Penn State's still trying. Penn State's playing to go to the Big Ten tournament, keep their season alive. So we might get some value with the Nittany Lions. What else you got?
I'm going to end with fading a team that you brought up earlier. I like Rutgers catching double digits against Michigan. I'm hoping to get 11. Let's just keep it simple. Rutgers against the spread in their last 8 as a dog. With Harper in the lineup, they're 5-2-1. He's fully back to his upside that he had early in the year that was making him a lock to be a top 5 pick in the summer's NBA draft. He just gave Washington 34, USC 25. They won both games outright. And defensively, the game within the game, this is why I like Rutgers so much. In their first matchup with Michigan, they held the Wolverines to 66 points. But more critically, 0 points off the Wolf to Golden pick and roll assists, those looks. That's what they essentially did with their film work. They said, we're going to take this play away, beat us anywhere else on the court, at least in your half-court offense. And Michigan was able to, only muster 66 points. And I also look at this mini slump that the Wolverines are in on the offensive end. 62 against Sparty, 49 in their win against the Cornhuskers. So I think this is the perfect time to take points, particularly if it's north of 10. I'd probably play it down to Rutgers +9. I think there's a shot that they just shock the Wolverines if you get a monster game from Harper. So the
Harper didn't play in the first meeting either, and Bailey had a horrendous game.
Exactly. So I think there's a lot of potential upside and a huge swing from the first game to this one, but it's really the defense and what they were able to do schematically to take away Michigan's strength in the half court. Why I think this is a much better chance for this to be a 1-possession game than a 15-point plus win for the Wolverines.
Well, that's all Michigan can do anyway. I mean, this team, all they do is win every game by 1-3, which is very bizarre because they're not a great free throw shooting team. They turn it over way too much, which is one of the reasons they can't extend and they can't hold leads. But the last time they won a game by more than 4 points was on January 12th against Washington. They're, as I mentioned before, their last 8 games, 4-4-3, 4-3, 2-3-3. And we're not talking a gauntlet of a schedule. It's Nebraska, bubble team, Ohio State, bubble team, Purdue in free fall mode, Indiana, bubble team, Oregon was a 4-point win at home, Rutgers by 3, not in the tournament, Penn State by 4 at home, not in the tournament, Northwestern by 4 in overtime at home, not in the tournament. So it's not like they've had this gauntlet of a schedule either. I'll most likely be on Rutgers as well. Last one I'll throw out, a scary one on Wednesday. NC State against Syracuse, probably be a small dog. The problem is they're probably going to get crushed. Syracuse is probably going to crush them on the offensive glass. But this is an important game for NC State to make the ACC tournament. Same with Syracuse. And NC State, the reason I say it's scary is NC State is 0-10 on the road. So it's not great. But they're 2-6 in games decided by 4 or less. Syracuse is 4-3. I just think we're going to have some value in NC State down the stretch because they finally played their ideal rotation and they played Paul McNeil, who was incredible against Wake Forest. I don't know what took them so long to play him and start him. And apparently he found out like 10 minutes before the game that he was going to start. And he was the best player on the floor by a wide margin. So I think they can turn Cuse over a bit. They won't turn it over themselves. Cuse won't force any turnovers. They can absolutely cook Syracuse in transition. NC State's elite there. Syracuse's transition D is really bad. Also pick and roll in the half court. They can cook Cuse there. Both teams take a ton of mid-range shots, but NC State's much better defending that department. 11th per Haslametrics. Clemson's 167th. And NC State, I think, has been pretty unlucky perimeter shooting-wise on both ends. If you just look at guarded jumpers on defense, unguarded jumpers on offense, teams shooting over 38% against them from 3 since January 1st. And they, despite the fact that they do a good job of taking away the 3. And Cuse is shooting 38% from 3 over their past 10 games. They're under 33 on the season. So I wouldn't be surprised if you get some good 3-point variance NC State's way. But I think it's a good matchup, and I think NC State might be a bit undervalued now that they're playing their ideal rotation. McNeil, what did he went with? He finished 24 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, no turnovers, just a dominant game. And every time he gets in there, he just is good. This kid's going to play in the NBA. And so NC State, I'm all the way out on this Syracuse team. If you look at their wins, who have they beat? They beat, over the past month, they beat BC in triple overtime at home, and they beat Cal. The past month, they beat Cal without their leading scorer. I'm all the way out on this Syracuse team. So I think might look at NC State. That's all I got. You got anything else, brother?
Just the ACC Big East potential. It's, the rumor that gets floated out there. I've heard this rumor before about some kind of partnership or merger on the basketball side. I'm all for it. I'm all for anything that isn't dictated by football. Football has destroyed most of the conferences that make sense in terms of geographic alignment and having these rivalries. So to be able to put Syracuse and Georgetown back in the same conference, and I think that would be really fun, even if it's just purely a scheduling kind of alliance. But the idea of potentially, I saw floated out there, you could have promotion and relegation between the two. That's an idea that really, it's one of the best European sports ideas that I've ever heard. I think it would be phenomenal, and have a game like NC State against Syracuse mean something, with one team potentially getting booted down to what's viewed as the lower of the two leagues. but just something fun to discuss because everything else with conference realignment has been the opposite of fun, like NIU leaving the MAC and things of that nature. So in terms of a hypothetical conversation, I'm at least here to listen to it.
By the way, one last thing, team, very intriguing for sure. Kansas State, one of the most bizarre teams in the country. They had like just a 6-game stretch where they were the best team in the country, and now they're back being terrible.
And as we said in the last week's episode, it wasn't just because they were knocking down 50% of their threes. Like all of a sudden they just leapt out of bed and they were a top 10 team on both ends of the floor. And now they're kind of turning back into a pumpkin, or we'll see at least. It is one of the most bizarre things that needs to be studied by college basketball historians.
Crazy. All right, that'll do it for us. We'll be back on Thursday. Myself, Mike, Greg, Tanner will have his America East Minute, and we'll preview our first of 31 conference tournaments. We will cover them all here. Thanks for tuning in as always. Thanks to Mike for joining me. Thanks to our producer David on the back end. Most importantly, thanks to all of you for tuning in as always. Let's get hot. Let's have a big March. Enjoy the madness. We'll have our live show Saturday, 10:30 a.m. Eastern as always. Make sure you subscribe, unsubscribe, tell a friend, tell an enemy, know the drill. Shout out to EdgeBoost. Make sure you check out that product. Well worth your time. But that'll do it for us. Thanks again, Mike. Catch y'all later. Cheers.